Hello and welcome everyone to the Spiritual Sisters podcast. This is Gabrielle Celeste and I'm so excited to welcome a guest today. Her name is Tannaz Hosseinpour of the Minutes on Growth podcast. And we are so excited to get into it. Tannaz, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Gabrielle. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited for this episode and to talk a little bit more about your offerings and your show and all the things. But before we get into it, we like to do this hot fire round of just the series of questions for each of our guests.
Go ahead.
And the first one is, what are your big three in astrology?
Okay, my sun is in Aquarius, my moon is in Taurus, and my rising is in Virgo.
Oh, okay. Okay, so still got 4 more questions, but I was just speaking with a girlfriend right before our show, and she is also she's Canadian, so I know you're based in Canada, and she just moved to Greece. So shout out to Angel Kelly, and I was just talking to her about how much Virgo energy is in our life and how we could just relate to the energy, especially of Virgo rising. And she also has a Taurus moon. So all this to say, yeah, I see you for sure. So I love that combination. Okay. In human design, what's your makeup?
I'm a projector.
Oh, okay. Yes. What are your profile lines?
I believe you mean the 6'4"?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm a 6'4". I'm a 6'2". One of them.
I don't think we've had a 6'4" on.
Really?
No. That's really cool. And also, so before we started recording, I mentioned that I'm very attracted to the tone of people's voices. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to your podcast and I was like, oh, I'm attracted to the tone of her voice. So you also sharing that you're a projector is so on brand.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some books, newspapers, if we still got those, magazines, podcasts that you are listening to and consuming these days?
It's so interesting that you mentioned tone, because I think a lot of the podcasts that I do listen to, tone is so important for me as well. Mm-hmm. How I feel, how my nervous system feels consuming their message. And for example, 7-8 years ago, I was so into Tony Robbins, but right now it feels too loud for me. It feels too strong. So now I'm noticing that I'm more leaning into, for example, audibles or podcasts where Sonia Choquette is speaking, or Michael B. Beckwith, a lot of the content from the Kabbalah Center, whether it's David Liam or Monica Berg. These are, I think, the people that I'm listening to, and it has a lot to do with their tone.
Yeah. Would you say that your interests also maybe mirror your process? Because Tony Robbins is very masculine, and it feels like a lot of those names that you just mentioned are more soft and feminine. Would you say that's kind of mirrored your process of your path and your spiritual growth?
100%. I think I was very much so in my yang energy up until, I would say, 5 years ago. And I think it's a reflection of the narrative that was in society, this hustle, hustle, hustle. And, we were really glamorizing the yang. And now we're shifting towards developing the yin within us as well. Me personally, I'm against this narrative of women should only be in their feminine and men should only be in their masculine. I believe that harmony is created through balance, having both and nurturing both and honoring both. But I think we have underused the feminine for so long. So I'm seeing this real attraction and pull towards developing the yin that was, again, pushed aside for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, especially now, given at time of recording, so much of the events that are occurring on a world stage. So I really appreciate that sentiment. Okay, so the next question is, if you could work with any guest, a client, if you could refer anyone, just whatever setup in terms of the offerings that you have, dead or living, who would it be and why?
Oof. I think right now, with what is happening around the world, I would love to sit with emotionally immature leaders who have intense unhealed wounds that are masking, and in an attempt to mask it, they are resorting to violence. Yeah. And So any leader that fits that category, I'm not going to name names, but any leader that fits that category, and there's way too many, so there would be a wait list.
Mm-hmm.
I think those would be my ideal client. And it was interesting because I saw Deepak Chopra do a talk a while back, and he's like, I have asked Trump multiple times, come, let me guide you towards wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I think that's the ideal client for many people, is these leaders, again, multiple around the world, who have unhealed wounds that they're now projecting through, through fear, through control, through violence.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this thought the other day because I was like, I have like this whole process before I wind down and go to bed, and it takes a minute, especially after, as you know, like just so much activity,
Mhm.
especially being an entrepreneur and doing so much energy work, where it takes me a while to calm down, and it takes like about an hour and a half to just really get settled. And one of the things that came to mind in that process for me the other night is like, what would the world look like if all world leaders had done the inner work and the healing and the inner child healing? And you did mention Trump. I was like, especially him with respect to, just where he's at what he's 79, 80. But I really thought about that because in astrology, in a lot of classes, his chart is so prime for teaching astrology. He has a great political chart. And I just
Mhm.
had that kind of thought. I'm like, what would the world look like if we had leaders that had done, or even are familiar with the inner work, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Different world for sure. And then the final rapid fire question is, if you could go to a concert for any artist, um, living or dead, who would it be and why?
So I'm not really into music, but if I could meet with any author, I'd love
Mm.
to read books for a hot, like just eat them, not even read them, eat them.
Hmm.
I think it would be Dr. Wayne Dyer. He passed
Oh.
away, yeah,
Hmm.
almost a decade ago. Yeah, yeah. And for me, he was my first spiritual teacher, and I always call upon his energy and his soul to guide me through life's inevitable ups and downs, and to bring the sense of ease and groundedness. So I would love to be in his presence,
Hmm.
one more time, in his
Yeah.
physical presence.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the GOAT for sure. He's
Mhm.
OG and goes way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so real ones know, that's for sure. So I was listening to your show, and I just have to share that I really enjoy the cadence, the topics, what you're offering on your podcast. You've been doing it for some time now.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to like the flow of like how we approach our podcast too. It's like what topics come up, solo episodes, all the things. But what I really appreciated, especially about your solo episodes, is that you're sharing just findings through your own process. Like you had one about the difference between self worth and self esteem,
Mhm.
and I really appreciated that because those are lessons I've had to learn the hard way. But I'm just like, I just feel like we can go to your show and like, oh yeah, like this thought, this sentiment can be true, and it's saving me a lot of time. And so that's what I really appreciated about it. But you also mentioned that you've been on this path for 15 plus years. And that's like OG status. So can you share a little bit about how you got into this work and what your journey has looked like before we get into the topic today?
100%. Well, first of all, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
And secondly, you know, for me, well, I was raised in a spiritual family. My mom was extremely spiritual, but was raised in a very open family in the sense that nothing was pushed upon me. Everything was be curious, figure it out. And I was around 16. I think my mom gave me The Secret, and she was like, read it. She knew I love to read. And then she's like, watch it. And so from like 16 to, I would say, like 18, 19, I was like, okay, let me like visualize, visualize, visualize. I'm like, wait, why isn't it manifesting? What am I missing here?
Hmm.
And I'm a very like researchy person. I always want to find the science behind everything, and like, what is missing in this formula? And that kind of led me to this path of self inquiry. But I think the major breakthrough was when I was 19, 20. I had my first life quake. And I like to call it a life quake because it's like an earthquake, but an eternal one, which shatters your whole life and your whole perception and beyond your imagination, something that is beyond the scope of your imagination. And Rumi has a beautiful poem, The Wound is Where the Light Enters You. And I think that became my first major wound that I allowed the light to come in. And as a result, again, of my mom kind of giving me Dr. Wayne's book and saying, this can help you navigate this unexpected life quake. And so through his words and works and all the other people who came after it, whether it was, Deepak, Dr. Joe, pretty much every other amazing soul here who's really sharing their wisdom and their insights, I started to look into, okay, what was missing in that formula? And, is visualizing and all that it takes to shift our perception of reality. And so I went and I read more about, Dr. B. Beckwith and the other elements that were missing. So, for example, taking inspired action, having clarity, community, embodiment, and just over the years kind of created a system that felt more aligned, that I could practice and see the results that I could work with my clients on. And, every time there is a life quake, I go deeper and deeper into understanding self. So in Kabbalah, we have this beautiful saying, pause, what a pleasure. So when something comes up, we pause and we say, what a pleasure this is happening, because it's creating an opportunity for deeper understanding and connection. And I think that's literally how the journey has been. It's been through these moments of utter shattering, and rebuilding.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so on point and so on brand, because it's like you think that the healing is done, but it's never really done. Those life quakes, as you put them, I think I refer to them for me personally as like dark nights of the soul. And I've had two really major intense ones. I'm just coming off of one, and being a Cancer sun, I'm kind of like every 2 to 3 years, like I'm kind of due for one, and I know that of myself. So it's so true though. Like the deeper you almost have like an opportunity to go deeper into your subconscious and thereby almost strengthen up and build up your nervous system. And I also just wanted to point out that it sounds like your mom was the OG in a big way too.
Yeah.
Like that's so
She
cool.
is.
That's super cool because for her generation, it's almost like still kind of a little bit taboo. And I almost feel like people around our age range and even the generations that are coming in a little bit younger than us, it's becoming more like accepted, and it's almost necessary just to hang out and to be able to sustain like the craziness that is planet Earth at this point in time.
Yeah.
But can you please relate and share how these life quakes provide the opportunity to strengthen the nervous system, and how you see that in your one-to-one work and then the retreats and all the things that you offer within your business?
Yeah, definitely. So there's this concept in therapy, post-traumatic growth. And what that means is we take that situation, we process it, we understand it, and by processing it means we feel the feelings associated to that. We create space for that heavy emotion that is overwhelming to the point that we want to numb it or we want to avoid it, and we create a safe container for us to feel it. So I like to visualize the body as a vessel, and we want this vessel to be as clear as possible. So we allow the emotion to arise and subside, the thought to go like a movie. We're not pressing pause. We're not pressing stop. We're just allowing it to simply be. And we are the witness. We're the observer, without judgment, without shame. And when we have had the opportunity to feel it, to process it, then we go into this process of now we reprocess it in terms of the trauma that it has left in the body. So the body holds score, the body remembers. And even though we cognitively understand something, the impact of it lies within our body. So now we need to go work with the body so that when it remembers that memory, we're not trying to forget, but that activation, that emotional activation is no longer there. And so it just becomes like the scar is there, but the wound isn't open. And we do that, and then, the next thing happens, and we repeat the cycle over and over again. That's why, exactly as you said, healing is a forever journey, because we're getting traumatized, whether it's a small t or big T, throughout our life in circumstances that are beyond our control.
Yeah. I think I'm in the process of understanding what it is to, or what it means to not judge an emotion, to sit back and to observe
Hmm.
it, but also even being in a place to feel safe
Hmm.
to feel your emotions. Because I think if you don't feel it, if you compartmentalize it, that's kind of almost like a danger zone area, because then it can like sit with you. It can integrate into either your emotional, your mental, your physical bodies, any one of them, spiritual, if you will. And I guess for me, and maybe you can speak to this too with respect to the judgment component of it, the like judging it almost provides the opportunity in possibly a negative way to kind of let that negative emotion almost fester and
Hmm.
grow and become something that it was never really intended to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of that, Gabby, has to do with the fact that we have labeled emotions as good and bad, right? As positive and negative. And so, like, for example, anger, you're, for me, like, I was growing up in a family, and my dad's like, don't be angry. It's not a good emotion. Um, but okay, teach me how to process it. It's impossible for me not to feel it. It is an emotion amongst all the other emotions. And again, I love poetry. I think a lot of the soul can be spoken through poetry. And Rumi has a beautiful poem called The Guest House. And in the poem, ultimately, he's saying, every emotion is a guest in your house. Let it come and let it go. And so, if we can learn, how can I feel this anger, then I no longer need to judge it, because it's like, oh, okay, anger's knocking on my door. Let me invite it in. Let me feel the feelings associated to it. And then it will naturally just go out, because it's done its purpose. It's done, it's delivered its message. But what you resist persists, and what you suppress eventually will, exactly as you said, come back and show up and manifest in other ways. Sometimes it's going to manifest in dis-ease. So, like, you know, illness sometimes will manifest through autoimmune diseases, um, through rage, um, ex- the more extreme manifestations of that. So it's so important to be able to remove the labels of good and bad, and to just sit with it. Hey, like, I guide my clients through an emotional check-in at the beginning of every session, and most of the time it's, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What is the emotion that I'm feeling? Where am I feeling it? And as you build that line of communication and that safety, which I love that you mentioned, because everything comes back to safety. We will reject anything that feels unsafe, because the mind is created to keep you in survival. Once that line of communication is built, and it might take multiple times for you to do this inner work and inner meditation and this inner check-in for that emotion to talk. Because if you've suppressed anger for, let's say, 30 years, you try to talk to anger, it's not going to want to talk to you, because it's like, I've tried to talk to you in the past, but you've called me names, you've shut me down, you've embarrassed me, you've judged me. I don't want to speak now. So we slowly start to rebuild that connection, and then the emotion says, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. Great.
That is so beautifully said. I was like, she is such a projector through and through. And I love that, because not only is it like so important to feel that within yourself, because if you don't take accountability for it, again, it's like root chakra and crown chakra that you're speaking to
Mm-hmm.
with the head and the safety. And the mind being trained, like its purpose is there to keep you safe. That's where I feel like a lot of fear tends to linger in that energetic body specifically. But what I'm getting at is that, like, if you don't take the accountability and take ownership within yourself, you can see it perpetuated throughout your lineage. And that's where, like, the lineage healing comes in. And as you were thinking, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel has, like, occurred for me with respect to my sacral chakra.
Mm-hmm.
So at time of recording, like last week, I had my cycle. TMI, but not really. We have a lot of psychics that are females that listen to the show. And it was the easiest cycle I've had yet to date. And I truly think it's because of all of the internal inner work, the somatic work that I've been doing, and feeling safe to address it and take accountability for it.
Mm. Gabby, can I add to that? To
Yeah,
that?
of course.
Thank you so much for talking about that. And I want to take this a step further and kind of dive into it because I think it's such an important topic. Similar to you, I used to have the worst cycles, 10 days of heavy bleeding, up until a couple of years ago when I realized, oh, there's a link between that to the sacral. And of course, a lot of trauma that was there. Some belonged to me, some belonged to my mom, to my grandma, and, all the other generations of women before me. But something I want to add to that, and by the way, it's TMI, I know, but right now I have like the easiest cycles in the world. It's just 1 or 2 days of bleeding and it ends in a couple of days. And I don't even feel like the hormones don't have that much of an impact on me as it did before. But what I want to talk about is menstruation and when girls get their first period, how society responds to them. That can play such a big part in the sacral chakra and just sense of self-worth and self-identity. Our first reaction, did we feel shame? Did we feel that we could tell the men around us? Could we tell the women around us? What is the narrative that was there when we got our first period? I think these are important conversations that need to be had that we are not having because it's still a taboo topic. So I just wanted to use that as an opportunity to open up that subject for people listening to have with themselves.
Thank you for saying that. And as you were speaking, I was thinking back to when I got my cycle and what was the conversation around it. And I also have and we're going to pivot because this isn't about me, but I do think that there's value in speaking to this. But I, thinking back to that period of my life, also coming from being raised Catholic, there was a lot of a lot of shame and programming around just sexuality, your sexual energy, your sacral chakra. So that's like a whole podcast episode on its own. But my question that came up as a result of that comment is or do you have experience, especially like maybe even from an observation standpoint with your clients or within yourself, if you have this, how does shame translate in the nervous system?
Ooh, um, oftentimes it takes us into freeze mode. It takes us into
Mm.
disassociation. Shame is one of the heaviest emotions to feel. It's one of the lowest vibrational emotions to feel. And when we're in fight or flight for too long, we then kind of pivot and we go into freeze, which is with this disassociation of self with others. So really, it takes us to it takes the nervous system so offline, far, far away from rest and digest, far, far away from the parasympathetic. And slowly, it's so important to again bring in safety to the body, to bring in safety to the nervous system so that I can feel safe feeling. Right? Because the opposite of disassociation is association, is feeling my feelings. So when someone says, I'm so scared to feel my feelings, okay, how can we start with easier feelings? And you'd be surprised, for some, joy is a very difficult feeling to access. So we go through them one by one. Okay, which one feels a little bit of a stretch outside of your comfort zone, not too much, because again, brain is created for survival, and it's going to be like, oh my God, let's not do the work. Let's cancel the session. We don't need this right now. Come up with 1,000,001 excuses to not do the work. So we got to be really smart with it and take baby steps towards feeling. And we start with the emotion that feels the most. But in terms of, to answer your question, a lot of disassociation and freezing.
Yeah, yeah, that's like medicine. And I don't think so much that that's my personal issue, but I've definitely observed it just like in society at large. And I think one of the main ways, just like the example of disassociation comes up, is truly through the phone. Like people are just like so glued to it, not even aware of where their conscious state is at, and so disassociated that they're so far away from even being able to tap into those inner feelings, the work, expand their consciousness, do the healing work, and so far. And just what I'm getting at too, the way that I see it for me is that because I'm working so heavily on my lower three chakras, so my root, my sacral, and my solar plexus, sometimes I don't feel worthy of like feeling joy. And
Mhm.
there's kind of like an unconscious block that I haven't uncovered as to why I can't take it to that place of gratitude and happiness, because I do have so much to be grateful for. And that's kind of where I'm at with my healing journey. And because I can't tap into that feeling of gratitude, I kind of almost keep myself in a low vibrational state. So I'm still unpacking that with my shaman at this time. But everything you said is just so valid and true. So tell us a little bit about what you have going on right now in your memberships and your offerings.
Right now, we are in, we're preparing for a beautiful retreat that we're doing end of the summer. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but the retreat is in August. It's on self-worth, actually.
I love it.
In Tuscany for women. And we do this often in Europe to kind of create a safe container where people can feel safe and
Mhm.
seen and heard and understood. And, everything that you were sharing, and I wanted to create space for you sharing that, was comes back to safety, right? Everything comes back to
Yeah.
safety. And we get safety from a sense of belongingness, that I matter. There's my presence here matters. And we are traditionally, I know we're going off topic, but we are traditionally tribal people. We are meant to be in supportive communities. We thrive in supportive communities. But because of technology, we have this illusion of connectivity. And it's taking us away from that need of belongingness, which then is kind of playing into, okay, I don't belong, so there's no value to my life, there's no worth to my life, and it just spirals us into deeper and deeper darkness. So that really has become my mission, is always to create communities, whether it's with my friends or we're doing retreats or group programs for women. We have this on manifesting self-love, which is a lot of psychology and spirituality and merged together. The one-on-ones, a lot happening, but the goal of all of it is to create a space where someone can say, like, I can exhale and just, unclench my jaw, relax my shoulders, and say, maybe, just maybe, this is a place where every part of me will be welcome and I can feel whole instead of broken.
I love that. I want to circle back to the comment of self-worth, because so like primarily in my readings I observe the chakras,
Mhm.
and the solar plexus is the largest one, and that's just a motherfucker, if I'm being honest, to work on. But can you provide some examples of, say, like what people, maybe conscious or unconscious, tend to associate their self-worth to, and then upon doing the healing work, what they then tend to associate their self-worth to? Because I feel like a lot of people, and this comes up in so many of my readings, are not conscious to what they associate their self-worth to, and 9 times out of 10 it's honestly it's their jobs. And I
Mhm.
don't know if it's because like I'm attracting that based off of like, that's what I used to associate my self-worth to, my self-esteem. But there is a change once you do the healing work, and I would love to know if you've observed those examples within your clients.
Yeah, Gabby, thank you for bringing that up. 100%. I think we have mistaken self worth with self esteem, as you said.
Hmm.
And we've created a very performative definition of self worth, that is, again, keeping us stuck in this spiral and keeping us away from our truth. And so what I have found is three performative ways that we are misunderstanding self-worth. First, we're saying, I am worthy if you see me as worthy. So we are now outsourcing self worth. I am only worthy if you say I'm worthy. And we see it in social media, how many likes I'm getting, how many followers I have. So that's the first one. The second is, I am worthy if I look a certain way. And we're seeing that with the beauty industry, kind of pushing that narrative onto us of, you're not enough unless you look a certain way, or unless you wear this, unless your body looks like this. And so it's not our fault, by the way. This is all societal messaging that we're being bombarded with on a secondly basis. And third one is exactly what you said. I am worthy based on my accomplishments. I am worthy based on my, the number of accolades I have, my position at work, how much money I'm making. So these three have distorted our perception of self-worth. And my work really is to remind people that self-worth is not earned. It is remembered. So we are here to kind of remove all of this conditioning and go home internally to our whole self. We are not broken to be fixed. We are simply whole beings who have been told that, who have been kind of, we've been given these narratives and these societal stories to forget that truth. Because once we remember that truth, a lot of these things that we have given attention to lose their value, lose, there's no money in people being whole. Ultimately, that's the end.
That is so true. That's so true. It's so one of the things that my shaman tells me, because again, working on so much like root especially, and I'm just like, man, this is not for the weak. But she's like, you're giving your power and control, you give too much of it away to the energy of money. And this was months ago, but when she said that, I was like, and then, and it was so true, but it's also so embedded, especially in our Western culture, for that to be the case. And yeah, so much of it does come down to money. Damn.
I think all of it comes down to money. I mean, look at war. There's no money in peace. There's no money. Like, there's so many things that there's no money in. And that's why we're seeing these issues.
Yeah. And I'm just like, well, what would happen if like money didn't exist? There's this SNL comedian. She has a podcast now. She just had Dakota Johnson on. I forget what her name is, but she does a lot with, it's like she's blonde and then she does it with Tina Fey. I forget her name. But she did this whole recap of like the generational like commentary about the relationship to money. So it's like boomers are all about money, and then it was like Gen X are, what can we do with this money? Millennials are like, where is the money? And then G's are like, what is money? And it was like so on point. And I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's like, what would we do if there was no money? Like if that wasn't even a thing, like what if our energetic currency was like our energy was our own currency. So, and I mean, I could see that happening in the future, but I guess we'll see. But damn, this episode is such medicine. It's definitely leaving me with so much to think about. But my friends listening to the show, check out Minutes on Growth, and especially the solo podcast episodes, because I just feel like these little nuggets of wisdom are readily available throughout the 5+ years that you've been doing your podcast. Which, can you speak to that too? Like before we wrap up, like 5+ years, girl, that is commitment, because podcasting is not for the weak. Like it's work.
Yeah, before I do, I just want to add, by the way, one thing, there's nothing wrong with money. I also want to say like money is, it's just energy. It's neutral energy. I think what is the issue is how certain narratives have come and utilized money as a source, as a medium to take us away from our truth. Otherwise, we're exchanging. I'm giving time, I'm getting money, and money itself is not the issue. I think it's the narratives around it that can become problematic. For example, let's say when we use money to hurt someone, to create violence, to create separation, to make someone feel less than, that becomes problematic. But money itself is neutral energy.
Totally. For sure. And there's a couple different points that I'll say about this, and please feel free to add on if you wish before we close up. But I really feel like people vote based on their relationship to money. They may not even be conscious to their lack or their scarcity mindset. And before doing so much of the work on my root chakra and like living on my own, I was like, oh, I didn't even know I had this. So, and it's like an everyday thing in terms of like your relationship to money, because it's a tool, it's a resource that's utilized every single day. And that's going to say so much about you. And I completely agree with it being the narrative around money, because it really is just a tool to survive. And safety is such a thing, because I do notice, I notice so much of like, I had a colleague, she's kind of in between whether or not she should stay in her full-time job. And she's concerned because she does her own business too. And she's concerned if she should, so we're in 2025, in 2026, if she should remain with the job, right? Because her business is built up to the point in which she could leave. But she's like, but then I don't know if I'm going to have the income to pay for my house and my bills and all the things. And whereas like her business is definitely sustaining her in that way. And I was like, oh, it isn't about that. It's about safety, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, I think that's kind of like where the spiritual component comes in, and the unknown and trusting the unknown is so much of this work. And again, it comes back to the core principle of safety. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah, you said it
Yeah.
so beautifully. Just to answer your last question quickly, the podcast started in 2017. I had no idea what a podcast was. A friend of mine called me and said, "You should start a podcast," because I used to love politics. I still do. Like, love
Hmm.
the exploration of different perspective in politics,
Yeah.
not the dirty game of politics, but the different perspectives. And it's like, you should do a podcast on like different political perspectives, because you can see different perspectives. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, I have no idea what a podcast is, but I'll look into it. And I looked into it. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, interesting. This is what it is. And then I sat with it and I said, okay, what would the message be? What would I want to talk about? And just the answer that came from me wasn't politics. It was spirituality. It was, conscious entrepreneurship, relationships, healthy relationships. And so that's how it came, because I really believe that the universe speaks to us through other people. So when someone makes a
Mm.
suggestion to me, whether because my background was in dispute resolution law, I wasn't even meant to be doing this work. I was conditioned to be a lawyer, but
Yeah.
someone in book club told me, look into becoming a coach. I was like, what is a coach? And then I looked into that, and I doubled down on niche down on relationship coaching, and then I went back to school for my third postgraduate degree in counseling psychology. But all in all of this to say, someone made a suggestion and I took that suggestion to heart. And that's how it led to where I am today and the podcast being birthed 8 years ago.
Kudos to you. That's commitment. I admire that. That's a feat, because truly not many people can say that. And yeah, I can't wait to also, so we're doing a swap. So we'll
Yeah.
probably drop this around the same time, like back to back. We usually drop on Tuesdays for our audience, but be sure to check out Tannaz's podcast, Minutes on Growth. It is so good. And where can people find you? What do you have going on? Please let them know so we can drop that in the show notes as well.
Thank you. Everything is at Minutes on Growth.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. We can't wait to be on your show. And this episode was such medicine. I feel like it's really going to support a lot of people. I just saw a specific number in my third eye, and I'm just really excited for the messages to land and to reach those who it needs to reach.
Thank you, Gabby.
Yeah. Until next time, everyone. See you then. Bye.